Yes, welcome to Home Studio Q&A, our live weekly show where I answer your questions about mobile and home recording. My name is Pete and this is Studio Live Today. And my goal here at Studio Live Today is to help you create, record and release your best music. And I get a lot of questions each week on my YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, a whole bunch of different ways. Someone did some skywriting last week and it was like, Pete, how do I connect a USB interface to my iPad? Yeah, it must have cost them a fortune. Anyway, that's the sort of things we do here. And we do this live every week. So if you keep an eye on the channel, go to studiolivetoday.com to see the ways that you can watch the show live and interact. If you are listening or watching on the replay or listening to the podcast version, hello to you too. Once again, leave any comments if you're on the video here and go over to studiolivetoday.com to work out how you can get in touch if you have questions. We will be getting into the questions very soon, but each week I like to talk about a bit of a theme topic. And this week I'm talking about your first song. So what is it about writing your first song, finishing your first song and releasing your first song that seems to trip people up, that seems so challenging? Well, here's my experience and here's what I've got to offer on this. Your first song is always going to be the hardest thing you do. Getting off zero. I often say everyone starts at zero. That's kind of my mantra. It's to say that if you've done nothing, don't worry. A lot of other people have done nothing. And by doing something, by having one on the board, one song out there, one run on the scoreboard, then you're better than zero. So you have to get over that. And you've probably heard my mantra here on the channel is create, record, release. And you could call the release share. So create, record, share. I just say release because I honestly think releasing your music has so many benefits. So releasing it using a distributor, releasing it to YouTube or SoundCloud, doesn't really matter how you release it, but getting it out there into public. And I know it sounds daunting. A lot of people don't want to do it because we have fear. And we have legitimate fear. And I talked on last week's show about the lizard brain and the resistance and my love of Seth Godin and all things that he talks about with the motivational side. And I'll touch on it quickly here. And that is that we were programmed from very early on to like avoid dangerous situations like being eaten by lions. There aren't too many lions eating us these days. But what we now have fear of is public speaking, of public judgment, of some stranger on social media calling us an idiot for doing something wrong. Now, that is hard to get over, but we need to actually work to do that. The reason that I have the community here on Studio Live Today, I have my Create, Record, Release over on Facebook, and I'm part of so many of these community groups, is that every day I'm out there encouraging people to release their first song. But it's not easy. And here's some of the things that you need to keep in mind. If you are working on that first song, or even your third or 10th or 100th song, the same things are going to apply here pretty much, but especially your first. Number one, it will not be perfect for two reasons. Perfection is subjective and perfection is almost impossible to achieve. So because it's subjective, what you consider perfect may not even be perfect to someone else. And you may put something out there that you think has so many faults and flaws, and someone will listen to it and say, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. That connected to me in a way that no one's ever been able to connect with me before. Number two, it won't be your best song. Your first song is not going to be necessarily your best song. You will write better songs in the future. But here's the thing. You need to get it out there. You need to get it out of your system, because by getting feedback on it, by learning what worked and what didn't work, your next song is probably going to be better, or at least be able to incorporate some different elements that are going to help you improve. Number three, excuse me, I'm getting all choked up again. Number three, it will have things in it that you don't like. You will cringe when you go back and listen to some of your earlier songs. I do it. Everyone does it. I'm sure like Elton John and Billy Joel and I don't know, name other, Justin Bieber, maybe. I'm sure these people go back to their early songs and go, wow, what was I thinking? I can't believe I wrote songs in such a way. That's the thing. It becomes your body of work though. And that's actually a really cool thing to be able to look back. If I didn't have my early releases, if I didn't start saying, hey, I'm just going to start releasing my music, I'd probably still be working and tweaking and be 98% there and not have actually grown or developed. Whereas the songs I'm writing now, I believe, are probably 3 times better than the songs I was writing 5 years ago. And I'm hoping that if I keep writing, recording, releasing music in 5 years' time, those songs will have learnt from the last 5 years. And I can look back on that back catalogue and go, cool, look at all these achievements. That's sort of on the negative side. What about the positive side? What are you going to get out of releasing your first song? Number one, you're going to get a great sense of satisfaction when you finish. It actually feels really good to be done. Why do you think we have checklists? Have you ever done this? Have you ever had a to-do list and then you forgot to add something to your to-do list, but you do it, but you don't just like go, oh, I've done that now. You write it on the to-do list and then you put a big line through it because it feels good to finish things. It feels good to achieve and be done with things. So that's the same with your music. And it will help you improve and create that second song. Once you've got the first one out there, the second one is so much easier. Honestly, and those that have released multiple songs will hopefully agree with me here. Song number one, super hard, really difficult to get done. Song number two, you're still finding some challenges, you're finding your feet. Song number three, four, five, it just gets easier every time because you're learning, you're better, you got better skills, better experience, better confidence, and you know you can do it. You've done it before. Our brains are wired in such a way that the comfort zone factor of doing something for the first time makes it really hard. It's like scaling over a big giant wall. Once you've scaled that wall once and your brain knows it can be done, the second time it goes to do that, it's like, I got this. We're going to do this together. So that's the second thing. And the third, and this is the final point, is it helps share your art with the world. I believe in the phrase that art isn't art unless it's shared with someone. Now, you could argue that point. You could say some people like to create just for themselves. And hey, if that's what you're doing and that's what you want to do, absolutely more power to you. I think for 90 to 95% of us, we want to actually share our art and we want to share in other people's art. So it's very much a two-way thing. And again, the reason that I wanted to try to create these communities, I don't want to be all like grandiose or anything, but the reason I wanted to put videos out and do these sort of shows is I know that there are people that were feeling like me. I know that there are people out there right now that are like, I just don't have the confidence to do that. So having an environment like an online forum or a group of trusted people that you can share your music with, that really helps. And I'll put the same offer I put out about a month ago, which is if you have your first song and you want an objective opinion, email me, pete@studiolivetoday.com. I will at very least have 4 minutes to listen to your song and give you like 4 dot points about what I think about it and maybe some ideas, or at least just be able to say to you, this is cool. This is something that you need to share and get into the world. That is going to do it. But yes, I just wanted to cover on that because I get asked that a lot. And someone in the pre-show here even asked the same question. They're like, how do I get from that? I'm 90% done. How do I get 100% done and get it released? Well, the answer is you just get it done and then you just get it released. You live with the imperfections because there is no such thing as perfect. And then you move on. Speaking of moving on, let's move on to the questions that we have here today. If you are here live and you have questions, I've got 10 questions that we're going to answer from people through the week. And then at the halfway mark, after 5 questions, I'll jump over to the live chat. If you've got a question and you're here live on Facebook or YouTube, just put the word question and your question. That just will flag it for me and make sure I can clearly see where folks have questions. But let's jump in and get started. Question here from CL says, does anyone make an interface controller combo? I don't want to use the boards, EQ, pan, etc., but I have a stupid Mac and only have 2 USB-C ports and I need one for charging. So yes, and this was in response to a video I did a while back about the difference between a mixer and an audio interface. The key difference is most cheaper home studio mixers only output 2 channels. And that was the case with my old one. I can't see it in background. And if you're on the audio version, you won't see it anyway. I had an old Samson mixer. It would only output 2 channels via USB. It meant you could still record, but you could record everything mixed down together into 2 channels. If you are looking for an audio interface that you're going to have multiple channels with, and you want to record, say, 4 different channels at once, you can't do that with your standard mixers, but you can do it with an audio interface. A hybrid device is something like what I have now, which is the Zoom LiveTrack L8. I really like it. It's a 12 input and 12 output mixer/interface hybrid. So that's the one that I actually recommend. There's others made by PreSonus, make some. I think Behringer make the X series of mixer interface hybrids. So yes, if you are looking for that all-in-one device, then something like the Zoom LiveTrack series. And if you go to my gear guide over at studiolivetoday.com/gear, you can see all of my recommendations for interfaces, mixers, and all the other gear I use in the home studio. But thanks for your question. Appreciate it. Moving on here, question here from F. Alan Rissler. So this was about copying audio files from PC to GarageBand iOS. And he said, lost me on the click the file sharing tab. I don't have one. How do you get one if it's not there by default? Feels like I'm missing something. Perhaps that was explained in a previous video. I just want to be able to transfer an M4A file to my phone somehow so I can hear sound recordings. So here's the answer to this one. Yes, you can. The iTunes file sharing has changed significantly in recent versions. So in iOS version 13 or iPad OS 13, there is quite a different way that you do things. And I've explained that. I won't go into detail here, but if you search for my recent backup video, so I did a video about backing up your projects, your song files, your files from your iPhone or iPad to and from your PC, transferring files. I go through all of the different methods. So there's 5 different ways there. There's using Wi-Fi drive, there's using iTunes file sharing, there's airdropping, there's Dropbox and Google Drive. There's a bunch of ways and some easy ways to transfer it. But yes, it has changed in recent times with that iTunes file sharing, and it's been a little bit more confusing because now you used to be able to say share to iTunes, but now it says share to Mac, and it's a different way it works. But it still works. It's just slightly different. So yes, sorry to not answer it here, but it would take about 10 minutes to answer. And I made a video that is 10 minutes that answers that question. So hopefully you can check out that backup video and find that. And if you are looking for different videos, go to studiolivetoday.com. There's a search button in the top right and the top left. Just click into that because that's the quickest and easiest way to actually search for videos on Studio Live Today. There's more than 900 of them over there. So if you are looking for one in particular, that is a good way to do it. Let's continue on here. This was in response to my mixing and mastering video. It's from You're Not My Dad. I guess I'm not. Hey, Pete, I would love your help with my problem. When I put a sample in my sampler, the key changes the speed of the sample playing. How can I change it? This is a question I get answered. I get asked an awful lot. And You're Not My Dad is right here in the chat. So I'll be able to give you my answer here live. Yes, this is a problem with sampling that goes right back to the early days of sampling, which is that what a sampler does is it records the audio and then it just changes the frequency, and which alters the pitch. And that's the point, right? So you go up an octave, it's an octave higher. But because it's changing the sampling rate, it is also speeding up that sample. Now, within GarageBand natively, there is no way to actually change that. That's the bad news. So what you would need to do in that case is either use a third-party sampler or a playback device that can actually do that. Now, I'm in the process of reviewing some of these apps at the moment. I haven't got a solution for you, but I'm working on. There is one app called AnyTune, which can allow you to do this. So you can take a sample, you can take a song, in fact, and you can actually change it without changing the speed. You can change the pitch. And this is really cool if you want to say, sing along to your favorite song, but it's like 3 tones out of your range. You can grab AnyTune, put the song in there, tune it down 3 tones, and then you can sing along. So that is a good tip and a good app that you can use. But yeah, the basics of sampling, unfortunately, means that it's going to change. And it's a bummer. The only way around that really is to kind of sample a sound at every different pitch and then use a different sampler track for every different pitch note. That is going to be able to make them the same length. Not super practical, but yeah, it is possible to do. So probably wasn't the response you wanted, but yeah, within GarageBand, within the GarageBand sampler, unfortunately, there is no way to actually do that out of the box. Let's continue on to the next question, which is this one from Maroon S. Hello. Says, would it be possible to do it? This is related to USB audio interface connections to an iPad or iPhone. Would it be possible to do it without the USB hub by attaching the audio interface directly into the adapter simultaneously with the charger plugged into a wall socket? Thanks. So what we're referring to here is, and if you're on the audio version, you can't see me holding this up, but I'm holding up the Lightning to USB 3 adapter, the genuine Apple Lightning to USB 3 adapter. It has a USB port and a Lightning port for power. Now, the question here is, instead of using a powered USB hub and connecting that to this and then connecting all your devices to the hub, can you get an audio interface, connect it via USB, and then connect the Lightning port to a power socket? And is that enough power to power up your USB interface? Short answer is yes, sometimes maybe, which doesn't really help a lot, does it? But yes, I have got my Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 and my Behringer Euphoria UM2 to work doing this. It does occasionally, depending on the power that's required at any given time, it will occasionally seem to just drop out And the reason I recommend a powered USB hub is you've got AC power flowing into that hub. That hub is powering your devices, and then your iPad or your iPhone just has to worry about itself. So, yes, if you were going to skip something, though, I wouldn't skip the powered USB hub. I'd, in fact, get the cheaper version. Not now. Let me be very careful. I would get the Apple genuine Lightning to USB adapter, not necessarily the version 3 with the Lightning port, because if you get something like the Tendac powered USB hub that I recommend, it has 4 ports. It can plug directly in and power up your devices, and it also has its own USB port for charging up your device as well. So that's the way that I would actually go if you were using something like that. But again, it all comes down to what level of reliability you want. So I'm always going to recommend, if you want to make sure everything's charged at once, Lightning to USB 3 adapter, genuine Apple one, powered USB hub, you're going to be good to go and have every scenario covered. One more question here, and then we'll jump on over. This one's related to releasing music, and I'm about to release a song myself. Speaking of releasing your songs, I have one that I'm releasing in the next 24 hours. This is a question about DistroKid, how to edit a song or album after releasing. From Fao Resmi, says, I edited my artwork. It has changed, but it didn't change on digital platforms. Will it change? Short answer to this one is yes, but it may take some time. So when you are releasing music to digital platforms, it can take usually 2 to 3 days, anywhere up to a week, especially Spotify. They seem to be the slowest. But you upload to your distributor, say DistroKid or Muse, and then it can take a while for them to process it. And then once they send it to the stores, it'll take a while for the stores to process it. Now, when you're updating things, like say you're changing the song title or you're changing the album artwork, that can also take a long time, or it can take a period of time. So it's not like an instant thing. Kind of like, think about sending a bank transfer or something. It's got to go from your bank to the other bank. They've got to verify it. They've got to process it. It's the same with a distributor. You send it to the distributor, they push it out to all the stores. The stores then have to receive it, check it, process it, update it. So it will happen, but it'll happen kind of randomly and at no particular time across the different platforms. So yes, but be patient. Unfortunately, I know we're in this digital instant culture where we want to be like, I want it and it should be there now. But unfortunately, it does take a little additional time to get some of those things resolved and to get updated. But yeah, if you do, by the way, here's the shameless plug section. If you are really thinking of releasing music, then using DistroKid, who I use for most of my releasing, then you can go to studiolivetoday.com/distro, and there's an offer there for 7% off your first year, and it's $19.99. It has been for years. They're going to have to change the price at some stage, but for about the last 4 years that I've been using DistroKid, $19.99 per year, unlimited uploads of singles, EPs, and albums. It's kind of ridiculous. You can be releasing something every day for 365 days and still only pay $20 to do it. Very cool. Alrighty, let us jump over to the chat and see what questions we have here. I'm going to scroll up and see if we see the word question. And if I see the word question, we're going to answer the question. I did see one before. And here we go. We've got a question from Larry Drool. Larry says, question, I'm looking for any and all advice to get unstuck. I get all kinds of ideas and start projects, then they sit and never get finished. What techniques can be used? So the number one, and this is going to sound super simple, I know, and I don't mean it to, but the number one technique is to set a release date and work backwards. So what a lot of us do, especially creative folks, is we think, okay, I've got this thing that I want to do. I want to make it the best it can possibly be. So I'm just going to keep working at, keep chipping away until it's perfect, done, finished, whatever word you want to use. The problem there is, though, that there's this concept that says that work will increase in size to fill the time that you have. Have you ever been the night before an assignment's due and you crush out like a 2,000 word essay and hand it in the next day and you're like, I've had 3 weeks to do that. It took me 3 hours. Imagine if I had the whole 3 weeks to do it and I started it. Well, no, it's still going to take you that amount of time because we do different things. We procrastinate. We take our time with things. If you have an end date where it needs to be done, then that's the best way to actually get it done. In terms of the actual practical advice to leading up to that, again, if you're looking at your timetable, look at what you'll actually need to do. Because again, if you go forward, it's going to be hard to do. But if you take, all right, I'm releasing a song on the 1st of April, and then you go, it's going to take me a week to master. So that's the 23rd of March. It's going to take me a week to mix. That's the 17th of March. It's going to take me a week to track. So that's the 10th of March. And it's going to take me a week to write. So that's the 3rd of March. You're like, okay, crud, I'm already behind. Okay, so maybe my release date's going to be the 5th of April, but you can partition that off and chunk it down into pieces and then have that finish. And the last thing I'll say, which is similar to what I said at the start, is just get your first one out there. I don't even care if it's not complete or if it's not considered complete. Just do the best you can and get it out, because it's getting over that first one and that hurdle of getting a song out that can actually get you unstuck. That can get the floodgates going. And even if you want to, I've done this before, it's the bad song challenge. So if you're super stuck and you really can't get something done, do like a 30-second song or an 8-bar song of the cheesiest thing you can possibly think of. Just put all these weird virtual instruments together or make up lyrics. You probably, if you've watched the channel, you might have seen my Chickens on Howard Street, one of the first projects I ever did. I did that just for fun to learn how to do things. I didn't actually ever release it because, at the time, I was like, this isn't good enough. But the same sort of thing applies there. So hopefully that helps you. And again, if anyone else has any advice or tips along these lines for Larry and for others, because I know others are going to have this exact same question, then please leave those down in the comments of this video. Sharing is caring. And I hope that helps you out. And I hope you are having a good time and getting some value out of this. If you are, I've got a couple of things that I want to ask you. As you can hit the like button, that just tells me that I should continue to get up early on Sunday mornings and put on this show and help folks out. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'd love for you to consider that. I have videos coming out every day of the year. We'll have a quick scroll down here and see, excuse me, if there is anyone else that has a question. There's no one else with question in front of them, although there's one. There is one that's I'll answer here anyway, because I've happened to see that there is the word question in it. I have a question. This is from Gabby. I've noticed that if I'm working on a song using loops, sometimes GarageBand will crash and I lose everything. Is there any way to fix that? So using loops, GarageBand will crash. Not specifically. Not that I have come across specifically related to loops. Good practice for GarageBand is to close out of the project and go back in at least every probably 20 minutes or even sooner, because GarageBand doesn't really have any sort of auto save feature. So make sure that you're closing and reopening the project. General maintenance is make sure you've got a heap of space. So at least 1 or 2 gigabytes. I usually say 5 gigabytes free space. When you're using audio files and when GarageBand's playing back, it uses a lot of that extra space, that storage space on your device to put temporary files while it's working. So if you don't have that space, you're going to either get crashes or you're going to get the optimizing performance, which can be horrible, that can pop up. The other thing is to close down any background apps that you have running that are going to be using processing power or using any network. And also make sure that if you're really having trouble or you're using an older device, put it into airplane mode. That'll actually shut off any of those background apps anyway, and it will remove any network use that could actually use up some of your processing power. So those tips are going to help you get some better performance in your GarageBand world. So hopefully that helps you out. Alrighty. Let's jump back on over to the questions. All right, we've got a few more questions to get through. If you are here live on Facebook or on YouTube and you still have questions, I will do one more scan and check at the end if there are any follow-up questions. Again, put question in front. That just helps me find them. Question here from Reggie Furlow says, sometimes I wonder if I'm using enough tracks. I swear sometimes I'm happy doubling like 3 tracks and that's it. Now, this isn't specifically a question, but I wanted to raise it here and chat about it because it's a really interesting one, because the number of tracks that you use is not necessarily directly related to the quality of the song. And I think a lot of folks see big producers with like 250 tracks in their song because they've got quadrupled vocals and quadrupled harmony parts for every single part, and they're using all of these effects and all of these plugins. That can be that overwhelming thing that can stop you from doing your thing. I was just yesterday, actually, I released an acoustic version of my song called Anxiety. And Anxiety was a song that I wrote and recorded on 4 tracks. So it's part of a 4-track challenge. So it is literally only 4 tracks. And to achieve the song, I had to do weird things like there were 2 guitar tracks, but I had to do backing vocals on the guitar tracks as well. So you make some compromises. You work out what you need to do. I also had to play a little bit of percussion. So I sat on a box singing the backing vocals, and I was tapping the box while I was singing the backing vocal so that I could get a little bit of a beat and a rhythm in there. So I'm telling you that to say that that's potentially the song I'm most proud of. It's definitely in the top 3 or 4. And it used like reverb, delay, 4 tracks, a bit of compression. That was it. So you don't need to use a lot of tracks. And if you're feeling like a song needs something else, sure, add it. But don't feel like, oh no, I've only used 8 tracks. If the song rocks, if it sounds full, if the mix is good, go with it. Like that is it. You're done. Finish that song, move on to your next one. Your next one might be 16 tracks or 32 tracks. Like every song will tell you what it needs. But it's like when people go in and they say, oh, I have to EQ this vocal. And I say, okay, what's wrong with that vocal? And they say, oh, nothing's wrong with it, but don't you have to EQ things? I'm like, yeah, if there's something that you want to remove or enhance, absolutely. You don't turn the volume up if something's at the right volume, do you? EQ is just volume for different frequencies. If all of the frequencies are balanced because you've used a good mic with good technique and you've recorded it in good quality and it's a good part, you've played it or sung it well, you might not need to EQ it. It might be fine. But if you're like me and they've got that nasally frequency that you want to notch out with some EQ, then do that because it'll make you feel better and it'll sound better. I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but yes, do what the song needs. Don't add tracks for the sake of adding tracks is my point on this one. And we'll move on. Question here from Neil Evans says, can I transfer PDF files from a flash drive to an iPad with this adapter? Yes, we've been talking about the Lightning to USB 3 adapter quite a bit in this one because it is my favorite piece of kit and it does a lot of things. And with the introduction of iOS 13 and iPadOS 13, it now supports USB drives. So to plug a USB drive in, you need to have power. So you do need the version 3 that has the Lightning adapter because for whatever reason, Apple don't send enough power for most USB flash drives even. I know, pain in the butt. And you need the drive to be formatted as an FAT format or a standard Mac format, which is HFS or HFS Plus, I believe. But apart from that, any file that is able to be opened on your iPhone or iPad can then be opened on a USB drive. So you can play music files and video files, PDF files, document files, anything directly from there. And the beauty part is that even if you're transferring something that maybe is not supported by iOS, you just zip it up, transfer it to where it needs to go, and then unzip it when it's somewhere else. So it's actually super handy. So and I've told this story as well, but I've been using it recently to sort of transfer zip files around to put them between my PC and different things. And because we can now control files so well and we can zip them up all natively within iOS, you can do things like I did yesterday, which is sharing my projects with people like Jade Starr, who played the drums on my recent track. And that was just a case of me zipping up my project, sending it to her. She unzips it, records some drums, zips it back up, sends it back to me. Like, this is pretty cool. We live in the future, people. It is a great time to be creating. Alrighty, we'll move on to the next question we have here is from GarageBand. It's from Crack Breath. Hello. This is about the save to files bug. He says, he or she says, it still says couldn't load content. Please try again later. Sad face. Something recent happened because I swear last week I shared a file from GarageBand to Messenger to a person in the same room. So yeah, sharing your files and sharing in GarageBand does have a little bug at the moment. And the bug is such that when you actually go to save a file, if you use the save to files option, it won't work. You've actually got to use open in and then save to files from there. Now, once you have saved to files, keep in mind that things like email, things like Messenger, things like, I don't know what else, WhatsApp, whatever people choose to use, often don't support large files. So they often won't let you upload or transfer a large file. It may have worked if you had a smaller file. So say you encoded it as M4A, a compressed file, and then you transferred it, that may have worked. If you have a full resolution WAV file that's like 60 megabytes, it's not going to work. What you need to do then is actually upload it to somewhere like Google Drive or Dropbox and then share the link. The other person can then get that link and download the file and listen to it or use it or do whatever they want to do. And as always, if you go over to Studio Live Today, in fact, if you go to studiolivetoday.com/GarageBand, there is a GarageBand specific FAQ over there that has questions and answers to this and many, many other things as well. A couple more questions and then we're going to finish off because we are over time. How time flies. I try to keep this show to 30 minutes. It usually spills over to 35 or 40. So apologies for that, but hopefully you're still getting some value here. Question here about the follow tempo and pitch function in GarageBand. Quick question. I imported a vocal sample that's 116 BPM and A major. I want it to go faster and change the key, but it's not working. I don't know what to do. It's for a remix comp that ends in 10 days. The clock is ticking. And this is from Hero. So this is a very similar answer to what I gave about the sampling. Same sort of thing. If you're importing a file or if you're recording an audio file and you change the pitch or the tempo, the key signature of the song, it's not going to follow it. Unfortunately, GarageBand will only shift virtual instruments, so things like the piano and the strings and loops and virtual instruments. It does do Apple loops, which is probably what sort of trips people up because they're like, well, if it works for Apple loops, why doesn't it work for my own loops? Or why doesn't it work for my own audio files? It's because they don't have the ability to be changed. And it's that problem with the pitch and the speed that we talked about before. So what options do you have? Third-party app again, something like AnyTune. Send the file out to there, tweak it by whatever you need to, bring it back into GarageBand. There's nothing native in GarageBand that can actually help you do that, unfortunately. Next question. So this is from Taylor Williams. And the question is, I'm using an iRig as my interface for my guitar, and it's so fuzzy and I can never find a decent pop rock tone. I've actually had about 3 questions about this, so I wanted to make sure I covered it here this week, in the last week. And the answer to this one is usually around the type of interface you're using. So there's 2 ways that you can connect a guitar to an iPad or an iPhone. You can use an analog interface, which uses either the headphone jack, or if you've got a newer iPhone, the little 3.5mm dongle, your 3.5mm to lightning dongle that you plug in your headphones. And that's actually an analog jack, an analog interface, and it's doing the processing and then sending it through. That, especially with distorted tones, doesn't do a great job. In my experience, you can get some feedback, you get some harsh sort of sounds, especially in the treble, can be really hard to tame. Excuse me. The solution here, unfortunately, is gear. I never like the solution to be gear, but if you want a cleaner tone or you want less distortion, less feedback, less noise, less hiss in your signal, and this goes for microphones, this goes for guitars, this goes for anything you're recording, it is to go with a digital interface. So I use the Steinberg UR22C. You've probably heard me talk about that a lot. I used to use a UR12. I've also got a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, Behringer UM2. Any digital interface is going to be better for you because it is sending a digital signal. It's doing the analog to digital conversion, the AD conversion. It's then sending that to your device. The problem with those other devices is that it's just sending an analog signal. Your phone or your iPad has to do all the conversion and all the processing. And it's not really the best thing to do. It's not really designed for high quality audio. So that is my response to that one. The iRig Pro series, the iRig HD, also good options if you want the simpler version that plugs directly in via Lightning. I use the iRig Pro IO as well. And once again, if you head over to studiolivetoday.com/gear, you'll see all of my recommendations over there. That was our final question that we had here. We've checked in live. I'll see you. I think we've got at least 1 or 2 more questions. So let me just check the stream. We've got one here. Here we go. This is we'll make this the last one because we are way over time. Inside Bilderberg's a question. I have never used GarageBand. Yeah, I started with Reason 12 years ago and have stuck with it as I like the interface and the workflow is good. Should I try GarageBand or would it be a step back? So my question to you, to the Studio Live Today community is, what do you think my answer will be? And the answer may surprise some of you, but probably if you've watched a lot, it probably won't. My answer is that you should use what works for you and works for your workflow. And so I wouldn't suggest necessarily trying GarageBand or anything different. And the same goes for anyone using any digital audio workstation. So the key of a digital audio workstation is that it's the tool. It's what takes all of your creative ideas, all of your music, all of your recordings, and it puts them into an ability for you to mix and master and release and create and do all those good things. If what you're using is working for you, you're 100% happy, you know it like the back of your hand, and it can help you with your creating, and you don't feel that you're missing anything, it's probably not a good idea to change. Why would you change? Why would you choose to use something different or try GarageBand or try something else? It's to expand out. So if you're like, okay, I know how to do everything here, but I want to try some different things. Maybe you want to experiment with some of the Apple loops, or you want to experiment with plugging in to your iPad or your iPhone and using like your guitar and doing something like that. Or there's some cool synth apps that you can use with GarageBand that you can't use with other things that you want to try things. That's sort of version one. And version two is if your software or your platform is not doing something that you want to be able to do. So the question is usually from GarageBand users saying, hey, I'm on my Mac. Should I upgrade to Logic Pro X? And my question always is, what does GarageBand do that not do that you want to be able to do? So if they can answer that and they say, oh, I really want to use the full Alchemy synth, and that's only in Logic, and I find myself limited by the smaller range of synth instruments in GarageBand. Excellent. Great answer. Go for it. If they just say, oh, I just think it's better, like it costs $400, so it must be better. Yeah, I think you're on thin ice. You're being a bit risky there, because upgrading gear or upgrading software and thinking that instantly it's going to make you better is not a great place to be, because usually it's actually the flip side. Usually when you first start using something new or different, you're not as good because you have to learn a whole new interface. So it'll take you a while to actually get used to what you're using. So my advice with this is, for sure, try it, especially for GarageBand. It's free, so you might as well try it, right? But yeah, if you're going to shift everything, shift your entire workflow, but there's nothing wrong with what you're currently using, yeah, generally you're going to stick with what you know. Not to say you don't want to experiment, not to say you don't want to try new things, but sometimes you can actually go down instead of improving. And it's not a quick fix. To make better songs and record better songs, you need to write and record better songs. You don't necessarily need better software or better hardware. Of course, if you're finding, like I said, you might say, Pete, that's the opposite to what you just said about that analog digital interface. Well, it is, because sometimes you get to the point where you've had the analog interface, you've grinded out all of the quality you can out of that analog device, and you need to just step up to the next level. That's okay. I've done that with microphones. I've done that with interfaces. We all do that with our iPhones and iPads. I could still be rocking an iPhone 5S. It would probably still work for me, but some of the things I do would be much harder, and I reached a limitation with that, so I had to go for the 10S. Do I need an 11? No, because the 10S does everything I need it to. If I got an 11 Pro, it would just be because it's shinier and has an extra camera. Okay. If I want that, more power to me. If I don't need it because I'm creating on what I've got, then that is the answer. I hope you got some value out of this one. Once again, if you did enjoy it, and there's someone else that you know in the home recording, mobile recording world that you'd like to share this with, the link is down below. Would love you to do that. If you got some value personally, hit the like button. That tells me that I should keep doing these shows. And of course, you can jump on over to studiolivetoday.com. There you'll find my Patreon link. You'll find my gear guide, my GarageBand FAQ, and a whole bunch of other links to videos, articles, and information to help you create, record, and release your best music. Until next week, I'll see you soon.